Hi there everyone. Today we have a special guide for you guys. It's my hunter guide. As you have seen on the YouTube, we have been successfully playing hunters in multiple matches with Rook Games and Queen Games. Today I want to bring the hunter guide to you guys and let's get started. Hunter guides. There are 3 possible hunter builds I'll be introducing, then we'll be following with the early, mid-game and late game guides. Over here, one of the possible builds and the most frequently builds for hunters are warrior hunters. 3 hunters are used over here instead of 6 hunters. We have the Medusa, Joranger, Beastmaster as the starting hunters. Of course, you can't have Medusa to start with, so what happens is, usually you have Joranger, Beastmaster followed by any other hunter. We do not need the other hunter, Sniper, Windrunner or even Marauder to be 2-star. They can be 1-star, then once we find the Medusa we can swap them in. The reason we don't need them to be 2-star is because if you sell them at 1-star and they sell for the same price, if you sell them at 2-star, they sell for less. We also want to aim to get the Joranger and Beastmaster to 3-star over here for this particular synergy. For the Warriors build, you want Tiny, Axe or Mars to be one of your 3-star warrior for the front line. The ideal warrior is usually the 3 warriors of Slaughter, Doom and Conquer. Why is that? Slaughter allows for magic resistance, Doom can isolate the target, and Conquer is a great human that can silence and also can send the bolt to the enemy, AoE stun and damage. Conquer also works well with Lightning as well. We also want 2 undead on the warrior hunter. Usually this is Abaddon with Joranger or Necromancer with Joranger. This build matures at level 7 and level 8 it can add additional 2 stars. What that means is, for those units to add on the board, you only need to be level 7. At level 8, you can add additional 2 stars of the replicate of the units. Say another 2-star Beastmaster, another 2-star Joranger maybe. Usually we want to match the different matchups, and if we're facing knights, we can change that additional unit with Enigma, or maybe a Tidehunter, maybe Manjaro or a Lich. Let's go into the next build. We have the Elf Hunter over here. 3 hunters or 6 hunters can be used here. Here we'll be focused on the 3 hunter, Elf Hunter. Again, you can see Medusa. Here we have Windrunner and Marauder for the 2 elves for the Elf Hunter. We can swap for the 2-star Medusa for Tide later for the magic resistance for the late game, because elves can evade physical attacks, they can't evade magic attacks. The 6 elves are Trained, Furion, Fighter Assassin, Templar Assassin, Anti-Mage, Windrunner, and Marauder. We're not using Luna here because Luna, although it's a great damage dealer, the hunters do enough damage for us. We did lose 7 elves here to allow Marauder to be swapped out for the Tidehunter and as a unit for the late game. For the early game, we can still use Joranger and Abaddon or Beastmaster as the 3rd hunter, because this is the time we only have probably 2 stack, 1 stack of the hunters, 1 stack of the elves. This build also matures at 7, level 7. At level 8 again, we can add additional units to make our build even stronger. Notice a lot of build I picked first matures quite early. This allows us to save up, allows us to be the dominating force in the early to mid game. Lastly, we have Night Hunters. This is not my ideal preference. I prefer the Warrior Hunters and the Elf Hunters instead of Night Hunters. 3 hunters are used here. Medusa, Joranger plus Beastmaster. We can also use the Windrunner. Here, the Windrunner is greater than a Sniper, and all those units, all the hunters in front of snipers are better options than the Sniper. Lastly is a Marauder. We want to find Medusa. Once we find Medusa, we can swap the Windrunner for the Medusa. The 4 knights we can use for hunter knights is Abaddon, Oni Knight, Chaos Knight, and Luna. This build matures at 7 again. At level 8, we can add additional units to counter units, and also at level 9, we can go even to the 4 undead for the multiple units of Warlocks. There's 2 Warlocks that can be undead, which is Death Prophet and Necromancer. We can think about 3 Warlocks, but don't get baited by 3 Warlocks. We can get more tanky with 6 Knights as well, and also the amount of Knights in the front line and amount of 3 stars we find is going to be critical for us for Night Hunters for the late game. We're aiming for 3-star Beastmaster and Joranger over here. What that means is, those are the 2 units we want to keep for 3-star. We can also aim for the Luna and Chaos Knight, but because this is the Hunter guide, we do aim for the Beastmaster and Jor over here. But you do soon realize the Beastmaster is obsolete in the Knights and Hunter lineup. He's a melee unit and he can't engage if the Knights are blocking him. Seeing those 3 builds, let's go into the next part. This part is the early game introduction. Early game for the hunters. This is when builds are selected according to the early mid-game strength, availability, and absence of same unit conflicts. The goal for the early game is to save up money. We want to save up enough gold. This can be done in 2 ways. One is the win streak, one is the losing streak. Usually you want to be on the 2 extreme ends. You want to be the win streak leader. With a win streak, you want to be on the losing streak to save up gold. This gives us higher average results. On average, we tend to win more games, or we tend to lose less games by coming win streak and having a losing streak. The key at this stage in the early game is to find any 2 stars and save up gold with the most cost efficient lineup. That means elementals, that means goblins, that means warriors, that means hunters. Let's have a look at this. Saving is a crucial highlight for the early game. Our build for the hunters matures with 3 hunters with decent tanks. What that means is having 3 hunters, we already have the base damage. There's no need for us to force a 2-star hunter when we have a solid front line. We want to start saving at level 6 unless it's a win streak, or we can maintain a losing streak. Those are 2 choices. When we don't have a win streak or we're maintaining a losing streak, 6 is perfect. We don't need to go to 7, but if we're maintaining a winning streak, we might be leveling up. Let's have a look at win streaks. We can level up or reroll for 2-star units to protect the win streak. Usually for hunters, I prefer to be leveling up for a higher chance of Medusa, Conquer, Doom, and maybe even Tide Hunter level 8. For the early games, we want win streak greater than losing streak, of course, and also after the win streak and losing streak, we want the potential of finding 2-star units. What that means is we'll be collecting pairs on the bench. Let's have a look at the losing streak for the early game. This is a crucial part for most of us. We compare the lineup with others. Usually we remove 1 or 2 units and we play less if we think we're stronger than it. And sometimes when we have a terrible start, we don't have enough pairs to be matching into 2 stars, we go full board, we still lose to enemies. The key is to keep losing. We don't want to win here, because this is when we exchange health for gold. The ideal for losing streak is not to be first or number 1 in the leaderboard. When we come back, is rather to be top 4. And here with the losing streak, 2 things to remind us is that you don't want to keep units that doesn't fall into the core lineup. For example, for hunters, we might just keep the hunters, maybe 1 or 2 ideal 2-star tanks, but that's all. We don't want to diverge into razors or maybe shadow fiends or terrorblades. That's when you save up money and build up an economy faster than anybody else. Let's see. The main units for the hunter transition in the early games are Jorringer, Beastmaster, Marana, Windrunner, Sniper, and Medusa. And how I rate the units in the early game is that I say my Jorringer is pretty much greater than or equal to Beastmaster, because the likability of Jorringer to find undead, but Beastmaster is also a nuker. So after that, this greater than this should be like this. Oh, here we go. After that, the Medusa is a special unit. Usually we prefer to have Windrunner in the early game over Marana and Sniper, but once we find the Medusa, she can be greater than all those 3, and we have the 3 starting hunters. Notice that we're comparing those units while at the same start level. The Medusa can be the one at 1 star level because she will be taking us into the late game. I do have a few recommended hunter synergies in the starter in the early game from round 4 to round 15 or 16. Those can be 3 warriors, 2 undead, 2 elementals, 3 goblins, 3 orcs, and 3 elves to go with the hunters. We do want to note that although goblins are stronger, if we take the warriors, undead, or even elementals into the mid game, they can still be relevant, but goblins will be falling off quicker than other builds. The unit positioning for the early game is the corner or side positioning, which allows most of our units to survive or do more damage. Usually for the case of hunters who want to do more focus damage, because each unit that jumps to us will be focused down. We have a few foresight tips for the early game. We are trying to get 1 of the low cost frontliners to 3-star. I mentioned about Tiny, Mars, and Axe over here. Slaughter or Beastmaster is a bit fancier, which they cost 2 instead of 1 cost. We usually prefer Tiny for his AoE stun potential and for his pairing with Razor in the mid game and also Enigma in the late game. We want to try to become adjacent. We want to try to adjust the lineup to the enemy's composition. For example, If we see enemies with more melee units, elementals is better. If we see enemies that deals more physical damage, maybe go for warriors, and that's the case for assassins. We also want to pick up Slaughter in the mid game for mages to go with Medusa. What are the units to look out as a warrior or even different compositions in the early game? If you want to go with a warrior hunter, Conquer, Doom, Tiny, Tusk, Axe, Juggernaut, Viking, and Mars. Those are also kind of arranged in a priority in terms of the purple units, but here the preference will be a higher cost 2-star warrior. For the elves, we want to look for Anti-Mage and Treant. It's hard to keep too many elves because we want to focus on hunters. Goblins, the traditional 4 goblins. What are the top pickups first in the early game? It's Lone Druid, Necromancer, Medusa, Doom, and Conquer. For the elementals, of course, Razor is better than the Morphling. What about using items in the early game? The Jaw Ranger is the best candidate for Master of Madness because she does have a passive and she does not cast any spells. For the Beastmaster or any other 2-star tanks, we want armor and stock shield. Windrunner will be giving mana regen items, but keep in mind, we'll be selling the Windrunner for her items for the Medusa. This is a crucial part. Most of us tend to leave the items on Windrunner for too long. She falls off after round 21 or round 26. We want to give items to the Medusa so she can start stunning, which is a crucial unit for us. This is the first replay to show the early game power of hunters. Over here we can see we have elementals, we have hunters, which the 3 hunters we have is Jaw Ranger. The 3 hunters we have is Jaw Ranger, Marana, and Beastmaster. Marana here did get to 2-star because we found multiple Maranas. Usually we want a 1-star Marana, but here anything stronger will work for us. The highlight over here is we did level to level 6 and level 9, which is uncurved leveling. We don't have the highest win streak, we still have some. What I want to show you guys is the potential to use elementals for the hunters in the early game. We can see the strength of Tiny, he's tossing and he stuns multiple units. Not only is that, Razor also provides a good AoE for us. What I want to show you guys is the ability to save up. Here we salvage enough units for 10 gold. We're keeping the Slaughter for later use against mages. Let me skip a little forward to show you guys. Here around 14 we have 33 gold. I'm going to skip a little forward. Notice here we have level 6 on the, we are at level 6. The plan here is to save up to 50 gold, then level to level 7 and 8, then to start spending. This build up economy with the efficiency of elemental hunters. We do notice we found the Necromancer, which is a big pickup. You can see again the Tiny is tossing and stunning everyone in the back, which he does stun and deal damage to the enemy. That's a 2-second stun as well. Again, I'm salvaging units for gold. I want to show you guys lastly, when do we find enough gold? Over here around 16, we found our 50 gold, which is the start part of spending. The strength of elemental hunters or hunters to start off with is we do not need 2-star hunters. We can keep replacing our hunters, we can keep picking up hunters to make the early gold. Once we have this gold, we can go to level 7 and round 17 and go further and beyond. So this is a demonstration of hunters in the early game using elementals. Let's look at hunters for the mid game. For round 17 to 25, this is a power spike phase for most players, where the top leader wants to maintain the win streak and the losing streak leader wants to come back and stop losing HP. So if you're stuck in between, definitely want to push up and go further. There are multiple lineups we can lose to, which do mature at this time, which are the Trolls, Mages, 6 Warriors, 6 Elves, and multiple Beasts. For the mid game, we have 2 factors to focus. One is the matching of power spikes we mentioned over here by spending and leveling at those particular round intervals for hunters. Usually we tend to roll to 50 gold instead of rolling further. Now with the aggression I see in the meta, it's actually a little nicer if we roll to 30 or 20 gold. We want to not bankrupt ourselves, so we roll to 20 gold minimum and we do use HP as an indicator. So when you use your remaining 20 gold is usually when you go below 30%. In the mid game, there's a phase called the lock and roll phase. What that means is it's the time when the build matures. Remember we mentioned about build maturing at level 7, level 8. Here our build usually matures at level 7 and 8, and we want to be rolling for crucial units, purple units to 2-star, and 3-star units with maybe Jaw Ranger, Beastmaster. One thing I want to highlight is limited bench spots means we don't want to find most of our units to 3-star because we can't have the gold and the space for them. Usually we want to go no more than 3 units to 3-star. Some great tips for us in the mid game is that spending and saving time is. We want to follow a very simple but very effective rule found most of the queen players are researched. I have been checking their portfolio and looking over there, they do spend in the first 2 rounds after the PvE rounds and they save up in the 2 rounds before the PvE rounds. If you guys know, there are 4 rounds for between each PvE rounds. For example, round 10 to round 15, from round 11 to round 14 are the PvP rounds and PvE rounds are every 5 rounds. We can follow this rule until the HP threshold of 30 is reached. Once we go below 30, you want to spend more to not die and to come further. This is the example as well. We spend on 21 and 22, we save up on 23 and 24. The second key thing for the mid game is positioning. Sometimes we have a great lineup, we might still lose to other players. Here are a few positioning tips for hunters. Right now, we know some of the in-meta compositions are knights, assassins, mages, and hunters. Some of them do appear every match. We can use a range advantage for knights and mages. When I say knights here, I do mention about the dragon knights more than the troll knights, because the dragon knight will be splashing onto us. If we're facing right against them, it's likely they splash onto more of the hunters than we're facing them adjacently. So we do not want to face them directly, we want to use adjacent defensive positioning. Similar to for mages, mages does a lot of AoE splash damage. If you're right directly in front of mages, it's likely our squishy hunters will die, even at 2-star. But if we're further away, we use the ranged advantage, and the units like snipers and windrunners will be able to take the rest of the units, allow them to pick them off after the first day of spells are casted. What about assassins? We have made the assassin guide on YouTube. If you guys haven't seen, I'll attach a link below for you guys for the assassin guide. Over here, if there are more than 2 assassin players, one to keep in mind is that backline damage dealer is the key. If the hunters die, the frontliners will usually be the ideal tanks like Tiny, Axe, and maybe Knights. They will not do much damage. If that's the case, we'll lose massively. What we should be doing is we're having 1 or 2 tank units in the backline. So on the last layer of the chessboard, we have 1 or 2 units in the backline. This will allow us to adjust for them, and also the units will be blocking each other and be tanking for the assassins once they jump in. Over here we have the lock and roll. What is that? It's something we mentioned about finding crucial 2-star units and finding 3-star units. One of the indicators of finding crucial units is if a few or multiple units are not 2-star, we want to be rolling around 17 and 18. This is when we can roll down to 30 or 20 gold, because we want to find them, we want to be spiking here, we want to match the power. We want to be rolling for hunters ideally at level 8, which allows for a higher chance of the purple winners like Medusa and Conquer, and also for Tide Hunter and other legendaries pickup. Having great late games and control, we can roll a little deeper than usual most of the time, and usually we want to have indicator is that when our health is less than 50% at round 21, this is something we want to go deeper. Because usually you want to be above 50% at round 21. But this might not be the case because how aggressive beast players are and other players are in the mid game. Again, we're referring back to the candidates of finding 3-star units, being Jorringer and Beastmaster. We don't want to go too far finding 3-stars like Abaddon, maybe finding 3-stars like Medusa, because those units do cost too much. Because they do cost too much, the frontliners, ideal frontliners to be 3-star are 1-cost units. And ideal units, other units to be 3-star is Jorringer and Beastmaster. For those that doesn't go for hunters, we'll not take those units. Leaves the pool free for us. We want to have a clear indicators for when to level for hunters. We should be level 7 around round 17. We should be level 8 around round 21. Sometimes this might not be the case, but ideally you want to be level 8 around 21. We can afford to go below 50 with the spending, because this allows us to be stronger with the hunter lineup. But keep in mind, going back before, if you don't have enough units to 2-star, you want to be rolling for them as well. The foresight tip for this stage of the game, for the mid game, is that we're we'll plan for crucial items like Desolator, Assault Curse, and Refresher by having items on the unit we can sell, or having all the pieces on one unit that we don't want to sell. For example, Assault Curse Medusa, Refresher Medusa, or even Desolator Medusa. We plan for top rows. Why is that? Because during the game, there's only 30 seconds. Sometimes we have to roll multiple times. For example, if I find a Tidehunter, can I replace that with a Beastmaster, or can I replace that with something else? So, not only do we plan what happens when we top row, we also plan where to position them. This saves time and also gives us more time to make other decisions during the game. Maybe to roll more for units, or maybe to adjust positionings. We want to keep our lookout for what is my weakest lineup. If we're weak against mages, we have to have the Nagas ready. If they're trolls, it's likely the trolls want to pull us into the ball. We want to position our units a little further to the back. And if they are knights, we want to plan for Enigma. But this is hard to find Enigma. For that particular case, maybe we can pick up a Doom, which would also do pure damage on a single target. The key for Hunter is having the Medusa 2-star and correctly positioned. We do have a few units on the lookout in the mid-game, which are Tidehunter, Enigma, Techies with Undead, Lich for one of the 4 Undead, 2-star Medusa is key, and 2-star Conquer and Doom, maybe Disruptor, that's very situational, and lastly a 3-star Lone Druid. Our ideal combination at mid-game is 3 Hunters, 3 Warriors and 2 Undead, 3 Hunters and 6 Elves, 6 Hunters and Tanks, and lastly, this is the lowest tier of Hunters, is 3 Hunters with random 2-star frontline. Because if you don't get a strong Hunter composition in the mid-game, into the late game, you start to lose rapidly. Over here, this is the mid-game demonstration of Hunters. We have lost a win streak here at round 19, which is not great. We have a lead right now, but losing over here at level 19 means we do not enjoy the win streak anymore. What we want to see is what are the spending options. Round 20 will not be spending. We'll skip a little bit. We'll defeat the monsters with ease. And now, what I want to show you guys is the way I went to level 8. Here we went to level 8 for 2 particular reasons. One reason is I want to find Tidehunter, a higher chance to find Medusa. We only have a 1-star Medusa, we do want a 2-star Medusa. Again, you do notice that we have Elementals as the front lines for Hunters. I do value the Elementals' potential of Tiny Stun and the Razor's AoE ability. Unfortunately here, the Tiny was silenced, but what I want to show you guys is the way we leveled further with a win streak. This was learned from the tournament, and this do work quite nicely. We tend to pick up legendaries, say Enigma, Tidehunter, maybe sometimes Techies as well. Over here, we did lose to the Warriors pretty massively. Keeping that in mind, we're losing to the Warriors. One of the best units we can find will be Enigma. And after losing to the Warriors, we'll be looking for units that counter Warriors. If you remember correctly, that will be the units that are Enigmas, and there will be more controls. We found Enigma for 2 reasons. One is that we leveled to level 8 so much faster. The second thing is, of course, we're on the lookout for Enigma. We're also prepared for Enigma with Elementals. So the Elementals will greatly benefit having Enigma. Also, Enigma can benefit with stoning against the enemy. We did take out the Venom here, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'll have the 3 Warlocks. What I would do in exchange now is I might be taking down 1 Windrunner for the 3 Warlocks. The game usually comes after round 26. Most of the builds in the late game should be level 8, and we're focusing on optimal level for the builds, and here with Hunters we want to be level 8 to be optimal. Optimal level for most Hunters is level 8 to 9, and the builds needs to be level 9 to be optimal. One of the best examples is 6 Knights, 3 Dragons and 2 Undead. We want to look at the item choices for the late game. The mana regen items usually goes to Medusa, Necromancer, Tidehunter and Conquer. Why the Necromancer? The other 3 are controllers. The Necromancer is here to regenerate enough mana to cast multiple times. Sometimes the Hunter lineup is so squishy. If a mage spell hits us, maybe the next one will kill everyone. But if the Necromancer heals a few times, this will change things. But of course, the priority is always the Medusa, followed by the Conquer and Tide, then goes to the Necro. Because we know mana items do not stack, that's why we have spare items sometimes for the Necro. Attack damage items will go to the Draw Ranger and the Medusa. How do we treat those 2 units? Is that Draw Ranger have better attack speed. Usually it's at 3-star this stage, we'll give it to Draw Ranger. But if it's the case it's a 2-star Draw Ranger, we're happy to give it to Deucer. And lastly, the tank items are for the front lines. Usually you want to give all the tank items to the Beastmaster instead of Conquer and Do, because those two can take damage and receive mana and cast faster. Beastmaster wants to survive longest to cast multiple axes. Beastmaster is ideally a level 3 or 3-star over here. The Doom and Conquer, if they're too tanky, they will not receive enough damage and cast faster. So sometimes it's actually counterproductive to make them too tanky. Let's look at the positional choices in the late game. I feel the late game, other than the lineup choices, it's the positional choices. For us to fight against warriors and knights, we want to position the Deucer correctly. We want to position the Deucer in the forward position so she take damage from enemies, because she's going to have a hard time to deal 50 damage. She needs to deal 50 damage to gain mana from attacks, but how tanky the warriors are and knights are, she's going to have a hard time. So this is why we want to control them early. We also have a unit of choice against knights and warriors is Enigma. Secondly, what about hunter versus mages and dragons? We mentioned earlier is I want to position adjacent. Sometimes you'll be swapping the units. The unit of lookout is the dragon knight for the dragons, and the unit of lookout is the keeper of the light. You want to be positioning adjacent or away from them, or maybe splitting from them, because we do not want them to be taking us down in a splash damage. The key highlight here is 2 Nagas. Initially you can have Slaughter and Medusa, and then you can swap into Tidehunter and Medusa. Unit choices here possible for against dragons and mages, Disruptor and Enigma. Tidehunter is a default hunter, so I didn't include him here. Disruptor can do great damage to the mage by silencing them, while Enigma will punish those balling units, the knights and the mage tend to ball up as well. What about hunter versus hunters? This is when the control comes handy. You can position units like Conquer, Tide and Medusa more forward, but you have to keep in mind, if you position them too forward, they'll be sniped off by the enemy. So we do position them side by side, and because of that, this allows them to take even damage but not to die. This gives us the upper hand to control them faster than they do. Unit of choice here is Tidehunter, Conquer and Enigma again. We get to see so many Enigmas because not only do Enigma punish the neutral monster, he will also punish players who group up. We know how often hunters group up, and Enigma single-handedly can do 50% damage if they group up. Lastly, we have hunters versus assassins. We again refer back to the hunter positional guide for the assassins that's recorded and uploaded to YouTube earlier. We want to have key positional melee units in the backline, and we want to surround Medusa and Draw Ranger. Medusa and Draw Ranger can be on the 2nd or the 3rd slot in the upper runs, which I'll be showing you guys with a replay. The unit of choice here again is Conquer, Medusa and Techies. Why Techies? We usually have undead with hunters. Having Techies over here will enable us to cast a bomb if he can deal enough damage or have enough energy items. Assassins are very squishy and they jump towards us. Techies here can punish them massively. With a 1-star techie, a 2-star techie will secure us the rounds usually. This is a demonstration of Hunter's positioning for the late game. We can see the split positioning. There's 2 reasons for this. I'm going to pause here to show you guys. The particular split positioning allows the crucial units in the front line to take enough damage to cast faster. Here the 3 controllers, the anti-initiate is the Doom. The Conquerors are the tanky ones. They can be stunning enemies with their bolts. The Laundry wants to cast fast by taking damage. The rest of the melee units actually 1 step back to not share the damage, to not steal the mana. Positioning of the Deucer and the Necromancer is aggressively forward to allow healing and allow early stuns. I did not position Deucer even further because there will be splash damage, there will be damage hitting the Deucer. I actually want the controllers of those 3 melee units to take most damage. Lastly, this Draw Ranger with the Doom. Draw Ranger is a hard hitting unit. We want to combine with the Doom to allow a sniping or to allow focus fire on the unit in front of the Doom. Let's have a look. We are swapping the Conquer because we do realize there's enemies that's in the top right corner. And we're looking around to see who are competitors. This is the Assassin player. And yes, we define an Assassin player and notice the positioning of the Deucer is also slightly forward to defend against Assassins. Unfortunately, that draw ranger did not make it, but the loser being the center of everything did cover up enough enemies to stun everything. Here, the particular positioning is not just to counter assassins, but rather to counter other lineups. I'll be showing you guys the other lineups we're facing as well. Let's have a look over here. Over here, we'll be facing a mage in this particular case. I want to show you guys what happens when we face a mage and how can a Deuce's positioning be helpful over here. The Deuce did receive damage early enough and she is stunning them before they cast onto us. And with that superior control we have when we start to initiate, the Deuce, although she died, she casted her stone gates on the enemy fast enough, which is a crucial point for us. Over here, this will be the last fight against the enemy player. For those that haven't seen this particular YouTube, definitely check it out. This was uploaded onto YouTube as well. So what's happening is we are match neck and neck with the mage player. We know where the tank here line up. We want to survive longer than them, and we also want to adjust Deuce's positioning so that she doesn't get nuked down at the very start, because there are multiple nukers and a 3-star shadow thing. Looking over here, the Deuce is positioning more further to the back. The conquer bolts have landed. The key here was not only to watch my board, also to watch his board. If he started to lose, then I can adjust a little further. Unfortunately, he won his round and I won my round. I'm gonna go a little further. Let me go over here. Over here, we picked up a Tide Hunter. Having the Tide Hunter and knowing where the enemies are, we know there. Let me pause here. We can see with the mouse that the enemy is positioned on his bottom left corner. What that means is he will be showing on my top right corner. This is the mirror match. And because of that, the Tide is positioned for a chance to cast his Ravage. 2 plans here. He can cast on my defensive round or the offensive round. As long as one of the time he casts, we should have the mage. He is not splitting. This allows us to cover them up. Unfortunately here, the Tide was silenced and fully nuked down. He didn't cast anything. But if you guys focus over here on the minimap, we can see the green dots are covering up the red dots. That means we have won convincingly on his offensive. We have won convincingly on his defensive round. So what that means is we have secured the game while we did lose this fight over here. Oh, and we did. That was a very nice game. I hope you guys seen that one. To summarize for this comprehensive hunter guide, my personal preference will be 3 hunters with warriors, which allows us to have multiple controls in terms of Conquer, in terms of Doom, and in terms of Tide Hunter and Medusa for the late game pickup. If we can afford to find an early lone druid, we'll go with the elves, because elves can be very spiked into the mid game with 3-star elves with druids as well. Lastly, when would I go with knights? It's when there are too many people picking hunters taking on the warriors and elves. Maybe this is the time I can go into hunters with knights, with the chance of curving into knights with trolls or maybe with dragons for the late game. Also 6 knights with hunters is still okay in the mid game. For the full version of this written Hunter's Guide, it will be published on Dota Heaven. It's a platform which publishes Dota 2, auto chess, guides, tips, and tier list. I have spoke to the organizers of our Dota Heaven to be publishing our guides for them and on their platform as well. I'll be attaching a link below for you guys for this particular written guide. Thank you so much guys for watching. Let me know in the comments below what do you think about this particular hunter guide, and to support me further, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. To support me on Twitch, please follow and please use your Twitch Primes here. Thank you so much guys. I'll be attaching all the links to the things mentioned in this guide.